Welcome to the Religion Unplugged podcast. I'm Matthew Peterson, editor of the show. In 2025, the whole world watched as Chicago native Cardinal Robert Prevost was elected Pope Leo XIV, the first American pope. Again, everyone watched as conservative Christian apologist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed at Utah Valley University. But while religious news events like these were known world-round, other important stories are being covered all the time by journalists like Bobby Ross Jr., a veteran religion reporter. In addition to covering Kirk and Leo, Bobby also wrote about Christian parents grieving in the wake of the Central Texas floods, faith's role in the Oklahoma City Thunder's championship-winning season, and the possibility of Christian higher education in Europe. So on this week's episode of the Religion Unplugged podcast, I sat down with Bobby to discuss not only the news trends he anticipates in the year to come, but also his career of 25 years covering faith through on-the-ground reporting in all 50 states and in 20 different countries. Bobby started his career reporting on what he calls the Godbeat back in 2001, when he was working for the Oklahoman. Today, he is the editor-in-chief of the Christian Chronicle, which focuses on covering churches of Christ all over the globe. He also writes his column, The Weekend Plug-In, every Friday at Religion Unplugged. Bobby and I's conversation spanned how his interest in baseball shaped his initial career decision, how he maintains fairness and accuracy when covering difficult subjects within his faith tradition, and even how to discern what is true in the age of social media and AI. So I think just to start, I'm curious, why'd you become a journalist to begin with? How did you get here? Why is that the profession you chose, if you even chose it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know, when I was a kid, I always enjoyed reading and writing, and when I was probably about fourth grade, started collecting baseball cards and got big into reading about baseball. So I would buy the newspaper to read about baseball stories and see the standings, and I guess somewhere along the way would read the other news and just kind of, the whole thing of a newspaper and, the ink and just reading about things happening around the world. I enjoyed that. And then when I got to high school, about the 10th grade, I had a friend there was a journalism class, and he had taken it, I think, the fall semester, and he encouraged me to get in the spring semester of my 10th grade year in high school. And so wrote some stories for that and just enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed seeing my name in the paper. I was a real shy kid, introvert. Still am an introvert, but kind of this profession forces you to get a little bit, more, I guess, extroverted, to be able to talk to people and interview people. But I think one of the first things that happened was I got assigned to do a story about the high school band, which I was in the band. I played tuba, marched in, all 4 years in the high school marching band. So they said, we wanted to do this story on the band. So I real shyly wrote down some questions on a piece of notebook paper. And when the band director was out of his office, went and slid it on his desk and said, can you answer these questions for me, wanting him to do it in writing. And he came and found me at some point and said, if you want to be a journalist or take a journalism class, you need to sit down and interview me and ask these questions in person. So that was kind of my first thing of being a journalist. And I think as through high school, I just really enjoyed it. Somehow I graduated high school in 1986, so I'm coming up crazily enough to me because I still feel young enough in my own mind, but I'm coming up on 40 years out of high school. So I was real active with the high school paper and then majored in journalism at Oklahoma Christian University in Oklahoma City, which is actually, I work for the Christian Chronicle now full-time, and our offices are we lease space from Oklahoma Christian University, so I'm actually on campus working at the school where I went and got my journalism degree, graduated in 1990, and then I think I've started to ramble on your original question, but, just really loved it and loved the whole process of the news and writing stories and, loved seeing my name in the paper back when papers still existed. I mean, they still do. We print the Christian Chronicle. We print a paper, but a lot of it, obviously, like religion and excuse me, Religion Unplugged is a lot more online now. But anyway, graduated in 1990. Did, I guess, 10 or 11 years of just the kinds of things that journalists do straight out of college, covering, worked for some small town papers. I covered some small city councils and school boards, and then went to work at the Oklahoman, which is the major paper here in Oklahoma City, and covered a variety of city and school news and the state prisons and that kind of thing. And then about 25 years ago, which was the column I think that prompted you to ask me about a podcast. My wife was the religion editor, and that's a whole other story there. And we decided that, her staying home with our 3 young children was a good thing. So I actually replaced my wife as the religion editor at the Oklahoman in 2001, which is 25 years ago. And then I've been in various places and various ways covering religion full time for 25 years now.
Yeah. No, I was definitely very interested in the fact that you took your wife's job. That's super. Yeah. Obviously, that's a really unique story. And
I had a little bit of a scoop there. I knew the job was coming open before anybody else in the newsroom. But
I bet. I'm curious. How did that go over in the long run with your relationship with your wife, and then maybe even just your relationship with other people in the newsroom? Like this sort of, he took his wife's job. Was that like a hard thing, or did that end up being more of a?
I think looking back, I was kind of at that point in my life, 25 years ago. How old would I have been? I'm in my 30s, and I think I was probably pretty antsy in the kind of things I was doing, which is probably one reason why I was changing beats every year or two, and going from city councils to school board education coverage to state prisons and that kind of thing. I think I was just hadn't really found my niche yet. And I think there was probably people thinking, well, here he goes again. He's changing beats again, and he'll do religion for a year or two, and then he'll move on to something else. And maybe even myself, I may have not foreseen myself 25 years later still be writing about religion. But I think I did find a niche when I started covering religion, and maybe really found kind of what I was, religion, what I was most passionate about, and even most educated about, and most, I don't know, it just fit a lot of things with me personally, because, my dad was a preacher when I was growing up. So, faith has always been very important in my life. I obviously attended a Christian university when I went to college, and so I think my faith background, maybe, faith was something I was passionate about, am passionate about, helped me understand maybe other people of faith. And I think, I'm one of those who doesn't think you have to be a person of faith to cover religion news. I think you more have to be someone who's willing to try to understand other people's faith and be fair and accurate and that kind of thing. But I think in my personal circumstance, it is something that my background and my interest, it is just really kind of aligned with me, and my interest in faith, my interest in journalism and writing. It's just kind of all meshed over the years in covering this area, this topic.
Totally. Yeah, and I was curious about that too, because I think about that all the time, the fact that it's very much an asset to be a Christian in the religion reporting space, and it's an asset to be, I think, of any religion, because you understand how seriously people take it, how important it is, and how careful you need to be when you are, covering other religions and other faith communities, even within your religion. But I'm curious, like, has there ever been a moment or a specific story where being a Christian did not feel like an asset to your reporting, and it actually felt like a challenge to sort of be fair or to be accurate for any reason or another? Has that ever been a difficult thing to balance, your faith convictions and your convictions about what to do professionally, or have those always been pretty aligned?
I think in general they've been pretty aligned, but I also think there are times when especially when called upon in this profession to report on quote negative news, let's say a religious leader's been accused or arrested, charged with sexually abusing children or sexually abusing vulnerable people under their leadership. And let's say that person confesses, "I'm sorry, please forgive me of my sins," which is a very, repentance and confession are very big parts of the Christian faith. And so then you run into a clash, and I experience this every few years, of people who like, why are you reporting on this? You're just trying, why aren't you forgiving this person? You're not being a Christian. Why are you trying to do negative news about this person? And so you get into some philosophical, ethical questions about, is journalism and is reporting news like that, is that a Christian thing to do, or is the media this evil enterprise that's trying to just trying to do negative news and get bad publicity about people? And my personal thing has always been, I believe in God, and I believe God can handle his own PR. And if you get arrested or you get charged with something and you're a person in a prominent position and you say you're repenting and confessing, I truly hope you are, and I pray that you are, but that doesn't change the consequences or doesn't change the fact that that it's newsworthy. And also, and I think I had a column, I guess last year, where I interviewed Jerry Mitchell, who's a award-winning investigative reporter. He's a Christian. He's done a lot of reporting on old civil rights murder cases of the 60s, and he always points out, have you read the Bible? Does the Bible hide any of the negative things, or do we find out that David was a man after God's own heart, but he was also a man who committed adultery with Bathsheba and lied, and I think, I'm a journalist, not a theologian, but I think he also maybe had this woman's husband killed or sent into battle, and we know all of these things because the Bible doesn't hold anything back as far as, even most of the heroes of the Bible, you find out negative things about them. But if, getting back to your original question and the, some of the challenges, but then people will immediately respond, well, you're not the Bible. You're just, you're the evil media trying to make negative news or trying to be sensationalistic, that kind of thing. So, but your original question about, does it ever clash? I think it's more like that. And I think probably, it still bothers me when people that share my faith don't seem to understand or respect my profession. But I think, to me, what we do in journalism is a noble profession. To me, it's a sacred calling. So I'm willing to deal with that and understand where people can maybe disagree. But I do see what we do is very important, and have, feel like ethically we're doing a very good thing.
Yeah, totally. I'm also curious. I was reading your bio on the Chronicle before we spoke, and I don't know if it's outdated or not, but it said, at least at the time that was written, you had reported from all 50 states and 20 different countries. And so first of all, I'm curious, is that the correct number? Are you still at 20 countries and 50 states? Well, can't go up on the states. But then also,
unless Greenland's about to become the 51st state. I've been to all
That's
of them.
true.
But yeah,
That's true. That's true. You got to
yeah,
get up there. You got to get up there.
yeah.
Um,
No, it's yeah. I've enjoyed. I guess when I got to the Chronicle and started covering national news and doing quite a bit of traveling, that was one of the goals I had, to hit all 50. So, I would go if I had a reporting trip to Massachusetts. I would like maybe try to shoot up and hit Vermont and find some stories, kind of in neighboring states. So I guess it's been about 10 years ago that I finally hit all 50. And guess what what would you think the final state I made it to would be?
well, I mean, I would think it'd be Alaska or Hawaii.
No, because those are
Okay.
places you want to go.
Oh,
So
right,
those
sure.
are yeah.
Oh,
But
so
I
it's like
mean,
Iowa. Was it
think
Iowa?
about think about where would be the last two places that you're like, I just got to get. It was the Dakotas. I finally made it to
Oh,
North
of
Dakota
course.
and South
Of
Dakota. And
course.
I've heard some other people who've visited, they've been to all 50 states, say, yeah, that was same for me. It was the Dakotas. Not, which I loved. I had a great time in the Dakotas. I'm not disparaging the Dakotas, but it's just
Right. I think they're beautiful in some
interesting.
ways, right?
Yeah.
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 But I'm curious, in all your travels, is there any city that was just unexpectedly just full of religion stories, or just you just found stuff there that you just did not expect to find? Sort of a place that kind of always sticks out to you as kind of a just journalist gold mine, maybe.
That's a hard question because generally I don't have the budget to just go and say, hey, let's go to
Sure.
whatever city and find a story. So generally before I get there, I kind of have a pretty good idea of the story or the angle that I'm pursuing. But I think New York City is a place that I'm always amazed just with the diversity and the various ways religion and religious life is reflected there, which is probably true of a lot of things, just given how many people from around the world they have. But yeah, I guess that
Yeah.
would be the answer I would give you.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You can't just show up and hope to find a story. That's stressful. That would not be a good move. You're kind of I feel like the go-to guy, at least at Religion Unplugged, for Church of Christ stories. And I'm curious, as we head into 2026, what are sort of the specifically like Church of Christ stories that our listeners should be looking out for, or things that are kind of developing that you think are worth following?
Yeah. And the Christian Chronicle it's a independent paper that covers Churches of Christ. So most of, my Religion Unplugged column is a general column, but what we do at the Chronicle is Church of Christ news, and I guess some of it would parallel with news in general, with just the decline of organized religion in the U.S. and Churches of Christ don't consider themselves a denomination, but they prefer the word fellowship because it's more of like autonomous congregations kind of loosely joined together. There's no central denominational headquarters. Each congregation is basically in charge of itself. So that said, the trends we're seeing were in denominations which sociologically Churches of Christ would fit in a lot of ways, as far as the decline and kind of moving to, like non-denominational churches seem to be growing more than denominational churches. So we're seeing some of that trends in Churches of Christ kind of trying to figure out, we're kind of known as a non-denominational denomination. So does the fact that non-denominational Christianity seems to be on the upsurge in the U.S., is that positive or negative news for Churches of Christ, which are in some ways a denomination but don't consider themselves a denomination? And so a lot of, we're dealing with a lot of, the news, the trends, and our, churches are concerned about losing their young people and young people leaving the faith and in their early 20s, and are they going to come back? And there are other the political culture war stuff that affects evangelical Christianity. There's a lot of parallels in Churches of Christ where that happens. And then The other thing is I've never really felt good about prognosticating what the news is going to be because you never know what's going to blow up or catch fire or become a big controversy tomorrow that, and maybe the biggest story of the year that we have no idea sitting here talking right now, which I guess is kind of the very definition of news is that it's
Right.
news. So you can't really predict it.
Totally, totally. And then, going off of that, I'm curious, besides the really obvious ones like Charlie Kirk's death or the new Pope, what stories really surprised you in 2025? What do you look back and say, I did not see that coming at all?
Well, I did not see an American Pope coming at all, but you
True.
stole that from me. You took the easy ones. I guess the rising anti-Semitism is kind of surprised me, and all of that debate and the questions about Israel, as I understand it, even evangelicals have not being on board with Israel. Some of that has surprised me. And I don't know if it should be surprising or if I'm just not tied in enough and hadn't paid enough attention. But I guess
Right.
that was one thing that surprised me. And I continue to be surprised by the growth of AI and the influence it's having on everything. I don't feel like I have quite grasp. I say AI and have a vague understanding of what it all means and how it's affecting things, including religion and journalism and all that, but I think I continue to be amazed just by new developments in that arena.
Yeah. No, I think the anti-Semitism one is something that we've been talking about over in our Religion Unplugged staff meetings, and just really curious to see where that goes in 2026. It definitely seems like more of another kind of younger older divide, where a lot of, I think,
Yeah,
younger
I think that,
evangelicals are a lot
that's a
more.
good, yeah,
Yeah, I think we're questioning it. My generation is questioning it a lot more
yeah,
than Gen X and the Boomers and stuff, and that'll just be another, yeah, another interesting thing to follow, and hope it doesn't totally divide everybody like everything else.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm also curious. As we're sort of closing out, you've been doing this for 25 years. That's one of the reasons we wanted to get you on the show. That's a huge accomplishment, and so appreciate your work. And I'm curious, as a young religion reporter myself, but also assuming there are other young religion reporters listening, what kind of advice do you have for people just starting out in the Godbeat? What sorts of words of caution do you have, and what words of encouragement do you have? What should people know if they're just beginning?
I think I would just encourage just to always be trying to understand where other people are coming from. I think that's the hardest thing in this profession is excuse me. I think the hardest thing in this profession is being able to report accurately and fairly on someone that you might disagree with or not understand their perspective. We were just talking about anti-Semitism. Let's say you have a personal opinion on what the U.S. stance should be toward Israel. I think it's important as a journalist to be able to not, you can't put aside your personal opinions and be totally objective, but I think you can strive to try to understand somebody else who disagrees with you and understand it to the point where you can report on what they believe and how they feel about something in a way where they can read what you write and say, yeah, that is what I was trying to say. That's how I feel about this. And I feel like there's too much. Well, there's a lot of advocacy in journalism as opposed to just reporting. And I can turn into a cranky old man over some of that seems biased to me. But I think yeah, I'm rambling, but I would just recommend trying to put yourself in other people's shoes and report fairly and accurately and honestly and trying to get the facts out there and help people to understand so that they can then make informed judgments about what they think and believe. And I think that it's harder now than it used to be to get the facts to people, because I think when I was younger, we would all get the newspaper in our driveway and we would read the facts, and we would have an argument over the facts and what we thought about the facts. And I think we're at a point in society now where we can't even agree on what the facts are. So how are we going to have any kind of intelligent, productive conversation when we think everybody's on the other side's lying about everything? And I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hugest things I'm thinking about right now is really how do I discern what's true? Because I trust certain publications and things like that, but then you get on social media and it's like, what does anybody even say? I get on Twitter and somebody has posted something about, there's some image of, I think I saw this week, some woman crying on the street because of like an ICE raid. And someone said, here's who this woman is. And it was like all this terrible stuff. And then somebody had like retweeted it with a comment saying, no, you're completely wrong. This woman is a completely different person than who you said. And then so one of the comments of that tweet had said, no, you're completely wrong. So it's like it's like totally impossible to discern. And
and you don't even know if you're arguing with an actual human, or if it's an AI bot that's making stuff up to divide us. I mean, it's crazy.
Or if the image is real. Or if,
exactly.
Anything.
Yeah.
No, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And I don't know. I'm curious. Do you have any sort of ways sort of you gut check if you're sort of getting down a spiral of what's true and what's true, sort of a way to like, how do you ground yourself?
I think you just strive to make sure the sources you're going to are legitimate, and you just strive to verify things as much as possible. And it may be that the younger generation has better tools or understands AI and all this stuff better than me, because I'm like you. Sometimes I get like, where do I even start on this? But I think maybe to get, since we're talking about religion and journalism, maybe keep fighting the good fight, because I don't think it's going to become any easier to figure out any of this stuff. It'd be nice if it would, but at this point it seems like a big challenge.
Totally. No, I appreciate that. And I think just to close us out, one final question, to whatever extent you can talk about it, what are you working on right now? What are you excited about? What stories are you doing currently?
Well, I will tell you about my latest column for Religion Unplugged, which will probably be, I'm assuming, will be published before this podcast goes live. Right. We talked about the column I just did about 25 years on the Godbeat. So makes me sound like an old man. But so my latest column is an interview with Richard Ostling, who's another Religion Unplugged columnist. He is now up to 61 years on the Godbeat. He started out at Christianity Today in 1965, and then I think 69 went to work at Time magazine and was their big religion writer for 3 decades or so, and then went to the Associated Press. And so he actually retired in 2006, but 20 years later he's still writing a column twice a month for Religion Unplugged, and writes another column for another website about they call him the religion guy, and he does his religion guy Q&A. But at 85, he still hasn't missed a beat on the Godbeat. And and I asked him the question you asked me about what advice he would give young people, and so I think he had some interesting things to say. But I can't imagine being that age and after that many years still doing this. But I do love what I do. So if at 85 somehow I'm still writing a column for Religion Unplugged. That will be pretty cool if websites and all this still exist in the current format. But anyway, that's one thing I'm working on, is that column, which kind of helped in a little ways. Put my 25 years seems a little not as much when you put that beside someone who's been doing religion writing for 61 years.
No, that's perfect. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to reading it. And when you get to 61, we'll have you back on the show.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, Bobby. Thanks so much for making time for us.
Okay, thanks, Matthew. I enjoyed it.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks. Bye.